evening, and welcome to the Richford Town Candidate Forum. I'm Michelle Monroe of the St. Albans Messenger, your host this evening, and this is being broadcast on Northwest Public Access Television. We are at the Richford High School on Thursday, February 21st. And I thought we would get started tonight. I first want to just sort of lay down a little bit of some ground rules to say that we would be appreciative if everyone could be appropriate in how they behave tonight. Let's be civil. Let's not do any catcalling or jeering or criticizing of the candidates. I would also ask the candidates to be appropriate in how they address each other or the issues. We want to make sure that the conversation stays on issues and on policy and does not involve personal attacks against other people, whether they're here or whether they're on the select board and aren't here. I want to make sure that if that happens, I just want you to understand that I will cut you off. So I won't allow any of that kind of back and forth personal attacks against people. You can criticize somebody's ideas all you want, but please don't attack the person. And so I just wanted to make that clear so that we're all on the same page tonight. And so I thought that we would get started by asking folks about their background, and also I've been asked to ask by several people in the audience how long you've lived in Richford. So if we could start here and go down this side, and then we'll go onto my left. So if you'd like, yeah.
I'm Scott Coons. I've lived in Richford for 59 years. My folks lived here their whole life, I guess. It's third generation Richfordite. Graduated from Richford High School. Didn't go on to college, just the School of Hard Knocks. Got a lovely wife, been married to for 41 years. 3 boys that I've raised. I'm up to 10 grandchildren, I guess. 11 on the way, maybe. Pretty much sums up me, I guess.
Hi, I'm Andrew Derby. Lived in Richford for 31 years. Graduated from Richford High School in 2005. After that, I worked at Blue Seal Feeds for 5 years. After that, got into kind of the sugar and industry, sold sugar and equipment for a few different companies. Now me and my fiance Melissa, we have a maple syrup packaging company. We started that about 3 years ago. Grown that company from pretty small to now kind of a large packaging business. Yeah, that's me. Jocko, your turn.
Okay, I'm Jacques Desautels. I've lived in Richford for 68 years. I lived in Montana for 6 months. I've got 2 nice daughters, which I was brought up on a farm. They were going to take over the farm after I disappear. But we've done all kinds of work when we were younger. I've been brought up, not just farming, doing excavating work, driving truck, logging, and all that stuff. And now we've helped out the town between my cousins, my brother, and my father and uncles. We've helped out the town as much as possible. Now I'm willing to help out the town in a different way.
And Josh, would you like to start?
Yep, sure. I'm Joshua Aldrich. Just about everybody knows me. I just recently moved back to Richford. I lived up on the Barrier Road in Berkshire. I've got a very large family, 7 children, blended family. My girlfriend here, Michelle, we both own businesses in town. I own the Redemption Center on Troy Street. And I was appointed by Governor Shumlin to serve on the Drug and Alcohol Council back when he was governor. I was the vice chairman for Vermont EMS District 1 board for Franklin County in 2008. I just entered into my 20th year on the ambulance service here in Richford. That's what I do. I do the ambulance, and I do the Redemption Center, and I also have a lawn care business. That's pretty much
I'm Guy Charbonneau. I was born in Canada, and for 2 days we stayed up there and came home. I was raised by my grandparents in Richford, Lionel and Teresa Macy. I attended Richford High School. I was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps. I worked for SD Griswold Company, ready mix company for 25 years, and presently working for my cousin. I've been around heavy equipment all my life and farm animals. Pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And the next question is an obvious follow-up. Why are you choosing to run for the Select Board? And I think we'll start with Mr. Charbonneau, since he was already speaking, and come down this way.
I just feel it's time to probably put some new blood on the board. Nothing against what's on the board now, but I just think new blood might have different ideas on directions that we can go and maybe save the taxpayers' money.
Okay. Josh?
I've been out doing some campaigning, and I also been on rescue for so many years. I hear what a lot of people have to say, and there's a lot of ideas that people want to would like to have a board bring to the table. And it's, I think all of us candidates would agree it's time for change here in Richford. And the biggest thing I'm hearing out there is people want to see Richford like what it used to be back years ago. Businesses, different jobs. It's not fun to go all the way to Enosburg to get a nail or a screw. So we need people that want to bring stuff into Richford.
Okay. Would you like to go, Mr. Cruz?
Pretty much the same thing what I'm hearing over on the other side of the pulpit there. Bring things back to Richford, get Richford back on its feet. Everybody seems to want the same thing. Like he says, you got to go to Enosburg to buy a nail. We don't have a hardware store anymore. Richford used to be a booming place years ago. My father talked about on a Saturday night, you had all you could do to walk down the street because everybody came to town to trade here in Richford because it was a local trade area. But things have definitely changed, and we got to get Richford back on its feet. There's some of the buildings that are dilapidated, that are pretty much outused their time here. I think it's sad to see them go, some of them, but I think it's to the point where some of them just have to be knocked down and getting rid of, and something else take its place. Hopefully not just a parking lot or a park, but got to get rid of some of the buildings, do a facelift. I know it all costs money. Try to get someone here with maybe some economic development knowledge that could not necessarily be a full-time 40-hour-a-week person, but somebody part-time to get us headed in the right direction, maybe. Try to find funding to support somebody that could do that. I don't know, just try to get Richford moving, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. The future of Richford for me is kind of, it's probably the most important thing. I'm fourth generation Derby. I have 3 kids. I've got 2 brothers. Each of them have 3 kids. The future of Richford it's important to me just to see it. Like Guy said, not that anyone who's a selectman now is doing anything particularly wrong, but just I think that we need a younger generation of people in there to make sure that the future for our kids and their kids. It seems like Richford's not the town that it was when my parents grew up here, or even when I was 5 or 6 years old. I mean, you see businesses leaving, you see there's farms, and everything just seems to be going away from Richford. And I'd like to do the best that I can do to try to maybe bring Richford back to what it was 40 or even 30 years ago.
I grew up in the 50s, and this town was a booming town. Now it's not. What I don't like is our taxes keep going up, and nobody does anything about it. First of all, I'd like to be able to not control, but to be able to fix things so that the taxes wouldn't have to go up every year like it does. You need to correct that problem, and so on and so forth. I agree with need new blood in town, so different ideas come along.
Okay, thank you. Some of you have already started addressing my next question. You must have anticipated what it was going to be, but I wanted to ask about redevelopment and what your ideas are for how Richford could try and improve its economic future. And it's not just Richford. I mean, rural communities across Vermont and across the country are experiencing the same kinds of problems. So what would you do to try and resolve that issue here in Richford? And perhaps we could start with you, Mr. Desautels, and come back this way.
Well, first of all, we gotta get in office in order to do something like that.
Assuming you were in office, what would you do? Let's start there. You get elected, what do you want to do?
And then as a group, we can plan something, together to make things better for the town.
Yeah, I gotta probably agree with Jacques that, I mean, for us to say we need to do this or that, or we all have a plan, I don't think myself, I don't have a plan of what we should do or could do. But I think that we could be, definitely more active about it and even have meetings where other people give ideas to the select board. And I don't think any of us have the exact plan in form of what we need to or should do, but I think we definitely need to be thinking about it. And I think that's.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coons?
I think the present board is kind of closed-minded on economic advancement. I've seen a couple different people come to the board and ask them about it, and they just kind of shun them aside and avoid it. I think you got to stop avoiding things and start acting on them. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I said earlier. Get somebody with some knowledge. Maybe there's even somebody in the community, if they were more open and asked people in the community, that somebody might have the knowledge on how to get economic development here. I know there's professionals that do it, and maybe spend a little money and hire somebody part-time to get their advice and some of their input would be my suggestion.
Okay.
I think Mr. Polander suggested that at a select board meeting in the past, and it didn't seem to be
Everything's always.
Too receptive.
yeah, no one seemed to think that it was a good idea, but I mean, at this point, it might be a pretty good option, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because everything's always ignored at the meeting.
I think a lot of it starts out with the boards that are before us, which are the Planning Commission and the DRB and stuff like that. A lot of it does come down to state of Vermont as well. We got quite a bit of property that's for sale down across from Pinnacle Peddler or the Jolly. And years ago, there was another outfit that wanted to come in there and build some businesses, and people complained about it, and they got every right to complain. But a lot of businesses don't like seeing other businesses come to town because of the competition. And there's going to be a snack shack opening up behind our bottle redemption down on Troy Street. I think that's great. It's going to bring more people to Richford. If the rail trail ever gets finished and up and going, hopefully people will start using that. Just all this commercial property, 105, it'd be nice to see some buildings down there, and everybody apply for different grants. You don't got to apply grants through towns. People themselves, businesses can apply for different grants. It's just if everybody, boards and taxpayers can work together, there ain't nothing that can't be completed. Fight for what we all want, and eventually it will come through. That's the way I feel.
Okay. Mr. Charbonneau?
I think it actually originally starts in Montpelier. Until they loosen up some of their permitting rules, it's hard for any town in Vermont to get a business in. The second thing you've got to look at is the workforce. Does Richford really have a good workforce? I don't know. There's jobs out there people can't get, employers can't find. So you have to have some kind of training, because companies don't want to start a business in a community if you have to get your workforce from another town. I realize that sometimes you can get a business in here with tax incentives. In the past, that's worked quite well, but then once the tax incentives are gone, it seems like that business is also gone. So you got to make sure whoever you're going to get into the community is going to be viable and has a long history. I mean, nothing against new factories or companies that want to open up. Some people think that the mom and pop stores are great. Some think the big stores are great. I think we should have a little bit of both. But until you can get everything all organized, and the bottom line is you're fighting with the state. The state dictates what a community can do. I mean, they're the final word. And you actually have to start with Montpelier first.
Okay. This is a question that was actually submitted by one of the folks in the audience. And she asked, how would each candidate revitalize the town to have the younger generation contribute more? So perhaps we could start with you, Mr. Coons.
Well, get the younger people to contribute more, huh? I guess you could start small, and that's where it all starts anyway, starting small. I don't know, there's a lot of different things they could do. Just doing, just cleaning up and pick an area, clean up and try to revitalize a spot, have a Saturday or whatever, and hit an area and try to give it a little facelift. Just, you know, some of the places are just kind of decrepit. They need picking up and just cleaning up, straightening out, planting flowers, putting in a few things that look nice rather than, you know, some of the stuff we do have around. You know, we're making it look better all the time, but there's still more work that needs to be done. I don't know. I'd have to think a little longer on it, I guess. I'm a slow thinker.
Aren't we all?
Could you read the question again? I'm
Sure.
sorry.
The question was, how would each candidate revitalize the town to have the younger generation contribute more?
Tough when you're on the spot.
Yes, it is.
As a parent, I would say that, you know, I think a lot of it starts with parenting. I mean, kids, if you don't make them do anything at home, they're not going to want to do anything. But I mean, as parents, I think, I don't know if it's a duty as a select board member to dictate what the kids do, but I mean, just without thinking on it much, I would think that it's, you know, if the parents do the job raising their kids right, that they're going to want to work and contribute. And
Mr. Desautels?
My daughters, they love greening up when it's green up day, because that's how I've always been all my life. I don't like seeing trash flying around nowhere, especially in my own yard. And, you know, some of these kids these days, when they get out of school, well, they're gone for the summer. So it's kind of hard to get them to do anything here in town. Those that are here in town, they could help out, you know, sweeping the street or something like that, you know, and, you know, and make it look a lot better.
Okay. Josh?
I think I really, really agree with Andy a lot on that one. A lot of it starts at home. But then, too, the schools actually do quite a bit, because, you know, you got to have community service hours, and that really, I believe, opens up to the kids and stuff, letting them know that, you know, they got to go out and be in the community, the fire department or the ambulance, or this week I've been in the town hall a few times once in a while, and there's been a little girl in there working around, helping out in there, and it's good to see stuff like that. I can't remember what, maybe Darlene knows, but there was a group that came to town, and they picked up a bunch of cigarette butts, and there were thousands and thousands of cigarette butts. And I can't remember which group it was, but, you know, and then the kids were tickled pink to see all of the accumulated what they've done. And as often as you can get them out there, it's good. And I do believe that here in Richford, it would be nice to bring something to town where they can go and hang out and stuff. But, you know, it all depends on how good they treat what's brought into the area as well, you know. But it starts for sure, it starts out at home, continues in school, it helps them get out into the real world.
Mr. Charbonneau?
Not to sound like a broken record, but I think the panel agrees that it does start at home. I think our school has done a great job and a notch as far as the summer camp they have. My grandson started out as a volunteer worker, and then he got hired as a counselor this past summer. And he works at the local mill in Richford when they have work available for him and his time off. And he's getting, if you start your children at a young age doing some jobs like mowing the lawn, and you give them, well, they want big money now, but you have to kind of regulate it. And then they know it's their money, and you put it away for them. This actually instills in children, I believe. And if we can get more activity out of the kids at an earlier age, like in a town like Greenup. When I was in school, and I'm sure Scott, Greenup Day, we had the day off. We used to, right? I mean, we painted fire hydrants, picked up garbage, and the school gave us an A for it. We could put that A anywhere we wanted to. And you know, you had, kids were going to work because some of us weren't, right, Scott? We're on that A, B honor roll stuff. So we worked to get that A. But I mean, I'd like to see that come back around. I don't know why they did away with it, if it was liability or something, but I mean, and every time you get a child to do like paint the fire, that saves the taxpayers money, believe it or not, because you're not paying an employee of the village to go out and paint the fire hydrant. So I'd like to see more of that, and I think that can be accomplished, you know, with teamwork, organization. I mean, I don't know why they ever did away with that. That was a good thing.
Okay, thank you.
I think with the schools too, with kids playing sports and things like that, I mean, that shows them hard work and dedication. I mean, for a kid, you know, if they're going to play all the sports and stuff in school, it's tough for them to have a job and be able to do both. But I mean, as a parent, I think at least during the summer months, you know, I mean, if you make your kid work or show them that you need to work a little bit, I think it's definitely good for them. But, you know, the school system with the sports and things like that, it shows them hard work, it shows them dedication. So I think they're learning it, for sure.
All right, thank you. A lot of our small towns in Vermont struggle with meeting the requirements of our open meeting law in terms of getting their agendas posted, getting their minutes posted. The requirements are pretty tight in terms of getting your minutes up and getting your agendas up and getting them online. In fact, some towns have even chosen not to have a website because it's so hard to meet those requirements. And so what would you do? Do you have any ideas of how you could help the town make sure that it's meeting those requirements for keeping the public informed through getting their agendas and their minutes to the public under the open meeting law requirements? So who would like to start? You want to, Mr. Charbonneau?
Appoint a good secretary.
Okay, there's an answer. All right. Mr. Aldrich?
There's laws and rules, and they need to be followed. I guess all of us running here, I would assume that we would all follow the rules and make sure that we all do the things, because when the town gets sued, taxpayers are the ones that are losing out. So just got to always follow the laws, you know.
Okay. Mr. Coons?
I think they could loosen up the 5 days getting your minutes posted. You could lengthen that out, as long as they get posted. You know, the minutes are the history of the actions done in the meetings at the town. And I actually went to the Selectboard with a letter earlier this year and charged them, I guess, or so I was told, but they were breaking open meeting laws. They weren't posting minutes. They weren't posting an agenda. They're still not posting an agenda now. But I think an agenda is an important thing, because people can look at the agenda and say, well, they're going to discuss the police budget tonight. I'm interested in that. I want to go see what they're going to discuss at the police budget. Now we don't have an agenda to see, so we don't know what they're going to discuss, so we don't know whether we want to go to the meeting or not. I think having a website is an important thing, because a lot of people work out of town in Richford. They get home late at night. they're not able to go to the meeting, but at least they can get on YouTube, watch the meeting, you know, and if it's something that interests them, they're more apt to get involved. But I don't think it has to be a real pressing, you know, I think the 5-day thing on getting your minutes posted is probably pushing it a little too tight. They could relax that, it might help some. At least they could have minutes posted, but I don't think they really enforce it too much, but we've got to do it. It is the law, you know, the Secretary of State wants you to do it, and the minutes are the history of what actions are taken on in the town. But I don't know, they can't really loosen it up too much because people really aren't, a lot of the select boards and a lot of the little towns, I don't think are really doing it the way they should now, presently.
Okay.
I agree with Scott, and I believe that since Scott had said his piece at the meeting, that now we have someone in charge of taking the minutes and making sure that they're being taken properly. And I mean, I think it's important to have, you know, that's their job, or you know, every meeting they need to be in charge of taking those minutes and making sure that everything is publicized to the town so that people can go and they can, you know, they can see what's on the agenda, and you know, if there's something that's being discussed that, you know, may affect them or they have an opinion on, that they should be welcome to come to the meeting and discuss it and talk about it. Because like I said before, I don't think that the 5 select board members need to be, you know, or may not know the exact right thing to do, but if you get some opinions from some other people, you make it a little more open to the public, and you know, make people feel like they're welcome maybe to go to a select board meeting. I was at the town hall the other day. I saw a guy, and he told me, he says, hey, he says, he goes, you have my vote. And he said, he goes, I went to a select board meeting about 3 months ago, and he said, I'll never go to another one again in the town of Richford unless they get some new people involved with our town. And I mean, with just, you know, with him telling me that, I mean, I think it's important that, you know, the agenda and the openness of it is
It's key.
it's key to the public. I mean, we're all part of the town. Just because there's 5 people in the select board doesn't mean those 5 people have to, you know, answer every question and make every decision. The opinions from the people in our town are very important.
Well, it's kind of hard to come up with new ideas when everybody else spoke ahead of me.
We'll let you go first next time.
But I agree with all of them. You know, what we need is a different person to take all the notes, you know, write the minutes down and everything. That way there, they don't, if they're not a board member, they're not writing just what they want. Then the town people will know what's going on after that.
It was interesting, some of the things that you mentioned, Andy, and I was just wondering what each of you sees as the proper kind of role of the board in the community. We know the select board has certain statutory obligations and things that you have to do. You have to sign off on the warrants, and there are certain policies that you have to oversee. But what do you really see as kind of the role of the board in the community? What should the board be doing beyond its statutory obligations in terms of how leadership and addressing the broader needs of the community? And we could start with you, Mr. Desautels, because that way you could get your ideas out first.
You what? Okay, I didn't quite hear.
Oh, yeah, it's sort of, what do you see as kind of the role of the board in the community?
What kind of role?
Yeah, should the board have what should the relationship be between the board and the broader community? And
Well, actually, the board, they're the ones who's in charge of whatever thing goes on in town. So they should be able to make the right decisions, and you know, and listen to the town people, so that things can be done properly.
and
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your board members are kind of the face of your town. I mean, if there's an issue in your town, if someone has an issue, they should be able to openly come and see you, whether, you don't have to be at the town clerk to go see them. I mean, they could stop to one of our houses and say, hey, there's an issue with my road, or there's an issue with this, or an issue with that. Could you make sure that at your next meeting it's addressed, it's talked about? You're the face of the community. I mean, if there's someone in the community has a problem, I would think a select board member would be the first person that they should come and talk to about that problem. And then as a elected select board member for the town, it's your right and your responsibility to address that issue and make sure that you take care of it as a group.
Thanks. Mr. Coons?
I think Andy summed it up pretty well. It's like he says there, the face of the community. There's other things. I've been an employee for the town of Richford for 21 years, I guess, on and off for the highway department. And one of their things is they're supposed to be, they're my employer, but I don't know how I can say this really. They need some work on how to treat their employees, how to manage their employees. It's a hard thing to do. The town's not a business, you don't hire human resources guys. The selectman kind of fills into that spot. There's a lot of different hats a select board has to wear, really. But they need work on personnel issues. I know that. That's one of the things I know they need work on. I know I'm kind of turning the question around, but.
That's okay.
You have to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Aldrich?
Well, they are elected to serve the people that voted them in and serve the community. So I feel that, I agree with the rest of the guys. They're the face of the town. They are always supposed to be there to listen, answer questions, and try to get back to you on a timely manner and not try to cover up anything. There's a lot going on, and we definitely need some new blood in there.
Mr. Charbonneau?
I'm trying to be politically correct. Those that know me know that's hard. I would have to say, like everybody else, sometimes dealing with the select board, when you leave, you're disgusted because you really didn't get your answer to your question. And sometimes they tell you not exactly the whole story. They seem to have a lot of stuff that they do that's in the dark. It seems like they go into executive sessions at the drop of a hat.
Too often.
When things start to get a little bit, and I don't think they can do that legally. So there's one of your things on your fire, your meetings. Number two, the biggest thing, I have the minutes from the last two meetings. I understand the first meeting is unapproved because it's a new meeting. But when you have your second meeting, the first thing you need to do is approve the minutes from the previous meeting. I believe that's the way it's supposed to be run. Well, I've got 2 minutes here, both unapproved. And I also, in reading this, correct me if I start going a little too far here.
I will.
The new sheriff's contract is up. Does anybody know that?
Yeah.
Apparently, the select board decided that $4,000 wasn't really a big increase, so they approved it. I thought we were supposed to approve that.
That still does have to go as part of the budget vote, so you'll.
Right, but what I'm saying is, here's your general budget for $8 million. We'll throw a number out. Well, taxpayers, now let's break this down. Oh, this is here. Oh, and by the way, we approved $4,000 for the police, for the sheriff's department. Well, you can't shoot one down without shooting the whole budget down. So this is where I think it needs to be, we need to know, and if I'm elected, I'll make sure everybody knows that this type of thing, as far as I'm not saying it's underhanded, I'm saying it's probably an oversight.
So
Being polite.
So you'd like to break, so one of the things you'd
Well,
like to
I
do
would
is
like
maybe
to,
break down
don't
the
make a
budget?
decision on something until you put it to the, don't make a motion to accept the new contract before the people get a chance to vote on it. Because now it's just gonna incorporate it into the general fund, into the general budget, rather. And they're gonna see that, and if it's not too big of an increase, but I don't see how they can do that. Now, maybe they can.
They, under Vermont law, they can, because
They
the
can.
select board has the authority to hire the police department.
Right, but
or to
when they
form a
want an
police
increase, they
department
can
or
do
hire
that?
them. Yes, they can do that. And then, but you have to approve the money. So the public has to approve the money.
So how can you
either
sign a
as part-
contract?
You either have to approve it as part of the general budget or on a separate line item if they want to do it that way. But, so what would happen is if the budget's approved, then the select board administers the budget. So that money would be incorporated in it. And then if you reject the budget, and let's say they come back with a new budget, then since they've signed that contract, that 4,000 is still going to be in there. And they would have to make up,
They have to cut something else.
yeah, they'd have to cut something else.
That's my whole point.
Yeah, although I'm also sure that the sheriff, if the town believed that the budget went down because of that, I'm sure the sheriff would be open to talking to them about that, but,
I
Yeah.
just,
yeah, that's how it kind of.
but then we go back to the meetings. The previous, I'm on a zoning board, the DRB board, excuse me. And before we have an agenda. I mean, every week, or every month, we meet, John Libby gives us an agenda for that meeting. And that's the way a meeting's supposed to be. You need to know what's going on, and you also need to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Well, I've got 2 minutes right here that are unapproved. It's even stated on top, unapproved minutes. Why wasn't the first one? That should be the topic right there. Bang. The first thing outside the agenda is to approve the minutes from the previous meeting. There you go. Then you have approved minutes that people can see, because right now you stick this on the wall, these are unapproved minutes. So really, they don't hold water.
They can be changed.
They can be changed.
Guy,
Yeah.
if you look at the second set of minutes that were taken,
On February 18th?
I don't know what you
Yeah.
got. In the first paragraph or second paragraph, did they approve the minutes from the previous meeting, or?
It says right here, if I may read it,
Sure.
I'm just wondering if the first set didn't get.
on Monday, February 18th, Chairman Linda Collin called the second regular meeting to order. Presented on the agenda. Eric Collins, other guests include the sheriff. Nowhere on here, and then the chair opened up with the agenda items. While the sheriff wasn't on the agenda, he was allowed to go first, and that's where the increase come in. But nowhere on this does it say that the minutes from February 4th were approved, which should have been the very first thing that they should have.
I think they approved them at the very end. I was
They
at
did.
A lot
that
of-
meeting, and they forgot to approve them at the beginning, and I think they got approved right at the last.
Yeah, they did,
the very
Scott.
Oh,
end.
they did, okay, hold on here.
Yeah, and a lot of select boards approve their minutes at the very end because they figure the public doesn't want to stick around for approving minutes and warrants, so they do that at the very end so that people from the public who are coming to the meeting can come to the meeting for the kind of meaty discussion of issues and before the town, and then at the end, they do sort of their administrative work. That's
Excuse
pretty
me, if
common.
it was right, it wasn't written on here then,
So they didn't include in the minutes that they had approved the minutes.
of the previous meeting.
The previous meeting. Okay, so I think we can move on from the role of the select board, at least in the broader role of the select board, but I wanted to revisit something that Mr. Coons brought up, and he again anticipated my question, which was going to be, what do you see as the role of the select board in terms of supervising and managing the town's employees? Because the town does have some supervisory staff whose role is to supervise people who work for the town, and then but everybody ultimately is responsible to the select board when you only have a town administrator, which is what Richford has. So what do you see as kind of the proper role of the select board versus the role of a public works director or someone else in the town who has supervisory responsibilities with regard to employees? So do you want to start, Scott, since this is an issue you have direct
Well,
experience
Seems like
with?
the present board, just when you have a problem, they like to avoid it and figure it'll just go away on its own, which I don't think is the answer, but that seems to be the way they like to deal with it. I don't know. Personnel can be a pretty tough, it can be a pretty tough job trying to manage people, for sure. And I don't know, most of the guys at the highway department, we get along pretty good together, but we do have issues and we do have problems. And if we do have a problem, we bring it to the select board. like I say, most of the time it just gets avoided. I think that's gotta change, for sure. I don't know if new blood in there would be a little more receptive on dealing with the people. I think I could deal with the people a little better than what's happening now.
Do you think that would be a conflict for you, working for the
Probably.
town and being on the select board? Would you have to
Well, I don't know.
recuse yourself from those kinds
I
of
probably
issues?
wouldn't be in charge of highways, you know, I'd be in charge of one of the other departments, either parks or water and sewer or probably something else, but I don't know, conflict. Years ago, the road commissioner was an elected person. He was a select person, yet he was the road commissioner, so I don't know if that was a conflict back then or not, but that's the way it always was.
Yeah, but I mean, if an issue comes up involving the highway department, would you say as a highway department employee, I shouldn't also vote on this
Well, I
issue?
don't think I should be able to vote, but I ought to have input for sure.
So you wouldn't recuse yourself from the conversation if it was a highway department issue?
Well, I don't think I should
think
from
it-
the conversation, because I probably would have,
I think his input would be beneficial.
yeah. As far as the vote, maybe no, I shouldn't vote probably.
Okay. And Mr. Derby?
I just think if there's an issue with an employee or anything, it just needs to be addressed when it happens, like it doesn't matter what the issue is, but it definitely needs to be talked about. If the employee does something wrong, maybe they need to be given a warning or they need to be talked to. When it happens, it needs to be addressed. And as a select board member, if that's your department that you're in charge of, it needs to be brought up, it needs to be talked about, and it needs to be taken care of.
Mr. Desautels?
The the selectman in charge of the road crew, doesn't dare to say nothing to anybody. I work for him during the summer at the farm, and whenever there's an issue with some of his workers, he tells me he tells me to go correct the problem. So, as far as I'm concerned, that's where the problem starts. He doesn't have the backbone to go down to the town barn to correct the problem. And I'm not like that.
All right. Mr. Aldrich?
There's a lot of issues going around town, and I think it should start, or it shouldn't, it should definitely start with everybody being treated fair and equal.
Right.
You can't show favoritism for this one or favoritism. Everybody should be treated the same across the board, and if somebody makes a mistake, there should be disciplinary actions, especially if there's proof. And that's not just for the highway crew. We got the ambulance service, we got the fire department, you got the custodial, right across the whole board for everybody. Everybody's got to be treated the same, and it needs to be that way.
Okay. Mr. Charbonneau?
I'm gonna take the high road and stay right out of that hornet's nest.
Okay.
I'd like to just, I don't know, I don't maybe not know the facts of exactly what happened, but rumor or hearsay or whatever, as a taxpayer in Richford, I was told that one of our employees that works for our town lost his job, and they put a note in his time card saying that he had been terminated from his job. As a taxpayer in this town, I'm more or less ashamed that someone would be terminated from their job from the town in that way. I think that an issue like that needs to be addressed completely different than how it was addressed.
It's not professional.
If I put myself in that employee's shoes, if I walked into work and when I worked at Blue Seal, if I walked in there one day and I went to grab my time card to punch in and there was a note there that said, sorry, but we're gonna have to let you go, I'd have been pretty upset. I don't think that a company should be ran that way. I don't think a town should be ran that way, and I really don't agree with that. As a select board, that never should have happened. That should have been discussed That employee should have been maybe brought in for a separate meeting and talked to about the issue. But it's things like that that I think 100% have to change for our town, and I'm all about seeing some change with that.
Yeah, it should have not been written on a note. It should have been told personally, face to face. And I agree with Andy. It should have been brought up to the meeting with the person being there to review the problem.
Very unprofessional, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
it's a human that you're working with. I mean, I don't know. I can't even believe that they would allow that to happen.
So we're coming up towards the end here. I've just got two more questions for you all. Earlier, there was a mention of some of the challenges of having a lot of empty buildings in the community. And what do you have any ideas about what could be done to either revitalize those buildings by attracting people to them? Is it something that the town should consider investing in the way some other towns have purchased some properties and then look to find the right developer for them? Should they be raised and taken down? So what are some of your approaches to that issue? Mr. Charbonneau?
The biggest thing that I have with that whole scenario is if we have a building in the town and somebody decides, well, I'm not gonna make the taxes or the tax sales, so the town buys it. Well, it's an eyesore, and the town has to tear it down. When they do that, when they buy a building and they have to tear it down, that costs every one of us in this room money. And the one who previously owned that gets away scot-free. Something needs to be changed where the person who owned that property has got to be held liable instead of every time the town goes up. You stop and look at the books. In the last 20 years, how many buildings the town of Richford or the village of Richford had bought? And then when we buy them for cents on the dollar, whatever, we find out the house is full of hazardous material, and there's another cost to the taxpayers. And the one who previously owned it, he's out doing something else, and the town taxpayers pay the brunt of it. And I think something needs to be changed about that. I don't know if that, as a town, the select board can change that, or if it has to go to Montpelier. But we need to address that, because that's a lot of cost right there when we tear buildings down, especially if we have to buy the buildings. And when I say we, the taxpayers, and the other gentleman who owned it or group, holding, whatever, gets away with it. And we already know we got a couple buildings here that town's in the process of probably gonna buy. So here's your more money.
Mr. Aldrich?
Speaking of buying buildings, town of Richford bought a building up on Elm Avenue just within the last couple of months. And I went to a select board's meeting, and they were talking about how to get rid of it. Next thing I know, I go to the bank, use the ATM, and I look over, and there's somebody that's gonna buy it for $25,000. So be it. At that meeting, it was discussed about putting it out to the public to see if, Joe Blow or somebody else, make a long story short, they might have been able to get more money for that. I don't know what kind of shape the property was in, but they buy it, we say pay the taxes on it. They're in the book twice for delinquent taxes, town of Richford, but anyways, I don't know. But like Guy said, it's, they do some really crazy things, that's for sure. But
Cost us some money.
I guess it would be nice to be able to hold the previous owner liable for some of the costs, but I don't know, like Guy says, maybe that's something that's gotta be taken care of in Montpelier. I don't know if you could bring suit on somebody and get some of the costs back, but some of the buildings definitely are outused their time and they need to be torn down. It's, some of them they're just
They've been neglected.
completely gone and they need to leave, but it is too bad that somebody just leaves it in the town's hands and we gotta bear the burden, but I guess that may be the cost of getting the town back on its feet and getting it looking a little better, maybe. I don't know. I don't know the answers. It's,
Yeah.
Good answer, Scott.
I agree with Scott, because like the buildings, they're not fixing themselves. So at this point, I mean, we could try to hold somebody liable for the issue, but they're not going to fix themselves. So if we ever want to bring the town back to what it was before, I think we may need to just maybe eat the loss, I guess would be the best words for it, and do what we have to do to purchase some of the buildings and get rid of them. I don't think there's a lot of buildings in town suitable for business. Most of them are all, houses. I know they just bought the house across from the Legion, talking about maybe tearing that down, making that parking lot. I think it's a great idea. But like Scott said, you're not going to have all the answers. And
there's a lot of houses that are empty because people don't want to live here. The taxes are too high. But yeah, some of them, before they abandon their house, they quit fixing them in order to be able to keep affording to pay the taxes. Once they can't do neither one of them no more, well, their houses are run down and they're not livable no more. There you go. It starts again with the management of the select board. Sometimes spending money where it don't belong or stuff like that.
Okay. And since we're coming up on 7:30, I thought we would wrap things up just by asking each of you to make your pitch to the public about why they should vote for you. And I do want to say that all 8 candidates were offered the opportunity to come here tonight, and the other 3 were unable to make it. But I do want to give you each a chance to tell the public why they should vote for you on town meeting day. So who would like to begin? Mr. Derby, we haven't made you go first.
Sure, I'll go first. I think I'm young. I'm a different generation. I got 3 girls that I'm raising in this town. I plan on living here for the rest of my life, and I promise that I'll work hard to do everything that I can do to try to make our town a better place. I honestly think that we need a younger, different generation of people involved with the town. I think that's about it. Honesty. I think honesty is a big thing. Being more open, allowing the people from the town to be able to be part of meetings and come up with ideas and give input on what they think that maybe we should do, or just talk about it amongst all the people that live in the town versus 5 people sitting in a room making the decisions for the town and not including everyone else. I honestly think that will make a very, very big difference.
Like I said earlier, we helped out the town the best we could years ago by removing snow, digging water lines with Bob Shover, putting sewer lines in, doing road work and all that stuff. I got uncles that did sidewalks. I got other uncles that did repair buildings here in town and all that. My cousins, we did the same. We paved the streets and town roads. We helped out the town the best we could back then. Now I want to help out the town the best I can nowadays with becoming a selectman.
Thank you. Mr. Coons?
I agree with Andy 100%, all but the young. I think you gotta have some old mixed in there.
I feel better now, Scott.
I think it takes a mix, maybe some young blood and maybe a few old codgers. I think we need more transparency and openness and try to get people involved out in the community, and I think he hit the nail right on the head. Yeah.
Mr. Aldrich?
I just hope that the voters put a new board in there. This is the time to do it. There's 3 open seats. There's going to be changes. No matter who gets in there, I do believe that people will work hard for everybody, treat everybody good. If elected, I want to respond to the people about trying to make Richford like what it used to be. And all I can say is I'll do my best, and I appreciate everybody's support.
Mr. Charbonneau?
I agree with Josh. I think the people, the voters this year can do some thinking. They can actually overhaul the whole board by putting 3 new people in, whichever 3 you deem you want to support. Because from what in the past, one person cannot change a board. Because what happens is, unfortunately, that one person's bucking against 4. This way here, if you put 3 new board members in, it basically changes the establishment, I guess is the best way to put it. And this is the year to change the establishment, no matter how you want to vote.
That's right.
It's up to you folks.
Yeah, everyone, I mean, everyone has to have it doesn't matter really who gets elected, really, but everyone has just to have a good outlook of the town obviously needs change. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you use the term the writing's on the wall or what, but at some point you gotta see that we need to do something. So it doesn't matter who gets in there, but I would just hope whoever does, you need to be active with it, for sure.
I was speaking with a voter today here in town, and she was saying how she would like to see, why does the same people have to be the road commissioner for 3 or 4 terms? Why does the same person have to be in charge of buildings for 3 or 4 terms? What, and why does that certain person always have to be the chair?
You don't have to.
Don't have to be voted on.
At the first meeting.
Yeah, I know that, but how long has the chair been chairman? The same
I
person.
Nobody else wants it.
On that note, I think we'll wrap things up tonight.
I think everybody knows what I'm getting at.
I'm trying to be nice.
On behalf of the St. Albans Messenger and Northwest Public Access Television, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight, and I'd also like to thank the audience and let you know that you can find out who won by watching Northwest Public Access live coverage of Town Meeting Day on, I forget what day it is. What day is it? March 5th this year. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for tuning in to our audience on the TV.